Hey Star Trek fans, welcome to another episode of This Week in Trek, covering the first week of July 2024. I'm Dan Gunther, and I'll be bringing you all of the news and new releases this week in the Star Trek universe. Let's jump right in with the news this week.
You're the captain of the most important space station in the entire Federation. You're news.
Leading the news this week is actually a new release, but it's a big one. Today, as this video goes out, July 1st, 2024, marks the release of all 20 episodes of Season 2 of Star Trek Prodigy on Netflix. As many of you already know, Prodigy was removed from the Paramount Plus Star Trek lineup last year, and the fate of the already completed Season 2 was unknown until Netflix purchased the distribution rights. Now, the giant of the streaming world is releasing Season 2 in a number of regions, including the US. However, in some regions, Netflix doesn't have the rights to the show. This, unfortunately, includes Canada, in which Bell Media owns the rights to Prodigy, where it will be released on ctv.ca and the CTV app. Still no word on exactly when that will happen, however. In addition to Canada, Netflix will also not be carrying Prodigy in the Nordic countries, Central and Eastern Europe, the Netherlands, Spain, Portugal, Russia, Belarus, or mainland China. If you live in one of those regions, you'll have to see Season 2 via means other than Netflix. As for me, I will be watching Prodigy along with my fellow Trek fans in the US, and Brandy and I are planning to do live shows for the second season. The current plan is to do an episode of The Unready Room for 2 episodes at a time, starting next Saturday, July 6th. I really hope you'll join us for those. It's going to be a lot of fun. As we learned earlier this year, the upcoming 5th season of Star Trek Lower Decks will be its last. I'm as bummed as any Star Trek fan at the impending end of this amazing and hilarious series. Mike McMahon, the creator of Lower Decks, is also obviously very sad that the series is coming to an end, but in a recent interview with The Verse podcast, he talks a bit about his excitement for Season 5, as well as some of his hopes for the future of Lower Decks. Here's some of what he had to say. The ending of Season 5 is the ending of a chapter that I knew I wanted to do. There are things that happen in it, I'm being very careful, that are sort of setting up spin-offs and setting up backdoor pilots. There's characters I'm introducing that you'll see clearly I wanted to do more with. It's definitely clear from his words that he has more that he wants to do with the Lower Decks story. He goes on to say, I almost couldn't believe it would be the end because these characters don't feel like they're ready to resolve for me. So Season 5 feels like an amazing send-off, but it certainly feels like the end of a chapter, not the end of a series. I would always be into doing more seasons, movies, comics, novels. Longtime viewers of this channel and listeners to the Positively Trek podcast know how much I love the comics and novels, and of course Lower Decks has already made forays into both mediums. I would be eager to see their stories continue in written form, if not in films and television. There were also some rumblings about the possibility of Lower Decks being picked up by a different streamer to continue the story, much like Prodigy was picked up by Netflix, thanks to a post following the cancellation announcement by Brad Boimler actor Jack Quaid. McMahon had this to say on that possibility. I don't want to get into any of that. Listen, I don't wear a tie, and that's tie questions. What I would say is, these characters are like my heart and soul. I put all of myself into this show. I really, really love it. And I'm always down to make more, if the cards align. Regardless of if the show gets picked up for more seasons somewhere other than Paramount Plus, I'm incredibly eager for Season 5. Check out TrekMovie.com's summary of Mike McMahon's appearance on the Verse podcast, where he talks a bit more about plans for Season 5 and the possibility of further legacy character appearances to come. I'll have a link in the video description to their article. Season 5 of Lower Decks is scheduled to be released sometime later this year, but a firm release date has yet to be announced. We will bring that to you as soon as we have it. Speaking of Lower Decks, folks who don't have a subscription to Paramount Plus have the opportunity to watch Season 1 of the show for free. All 10 episodes of Season 1 have recently been made available on YouTube to residents of the USA. Thanks to TrekMovie.com, all of the episodes have been assembled into a playlist, which you can find in the article I've linked below. We have no idea how long the episodes will be available on YouTube, so if you haven't yet seen them, grab your chance as soon as possible. And finally, a last bit of fun Trek news from the last week coming from Fan Expo Boston, where actor Rosario Dawson recently made an appearance. Dawson has been on the record in the past saying that she is a massive Star Trek fan and would love the opportunity to appear in a role on Star Trek. Well, according to a recent report in the Worcester Telegram and Gazette, she was recently asked to appear in Trek, but had to turn it down due to her commitment to the Ahsoka Star Wars television series. The Telegram quotes her as saying, "I could have been one of Odo's species, the Changeling. I could have been an immortal puddle, guys. Do you understand my pain? That would have been really cool." She doesn't make clear which Star Trek show she would have appeared in. During the time period she is speaking about, a changeling did appear in a 4th season episode of Star Trek Discovery. In the episode All In, the changeling in question is caught cheating aboard Hasmazaro's Karma barge. The changelings, of course, also played a pivotal role in Season 3 of Star Trek Picard, but according to TrekMovie.com, who did a bit of digging, Dawson was not offered a role in Picard's 3rd season. I, for one, would love to see Rosario Dawson appear in a future Star Trek production. I've loved her work in film and television, and I think that she would make a great addition to the Star Trek universe.
Sometimes I think you North Americans read nothing but comic books and those ridiculous science fiction novels.
The big release this week is, of course, Season 2 of Star Trek Prodigy on Netflix, but beyond that, we have a pair of comics releasing this week that are pivotal to the ongoing interconnected story currently playing out in IDW's Star Trek comic series. First up is Sons of Star Trek number 4, concluding that miniseries that has seen Jake, Alexander, Nog, and Q Jr. jumping realities and facing off against the Breen. Here's the synopsis from IDW. What do you get when you cross 3 of the Federation's most celebrated sons with a misguided god? An alternate reality full of lessons that may be just what the Doctor ordered. But with Jake Sisko's enrollment in the Pennington School, Alexander Roshenko's prison sentence, and Nog's first Starfleet posting all fast approaching, they'll have to move fast to defeat the Breen once and for all if they're to convince Q Jr. to return them to their home reality. The final chapter of Sons of Star Trek concludes here. Sons of Star Trek number 4 is written by Morgan Hampton with art by Angel Hernandez. Also out this week is the Star Trek annual issue, featuring Data attempting to track down his wayward twin. Here's the synopsis. With no one but himself to blame for his brother's sudden escape during the Klingon Day of Blood, Lieutenant Commander Data sheds his Starfleet uniform for an ensemble inspired by none other than Sherlock Holmes to track down Lore's whereabouts and figure out what sinister plans he's been scheming. With the one and only Miles O'Brien as his Watson at his side, there is no mystery that Detective Data can't solve. Acclaimed artist Rachael Stott, Star Wars, Doctor Who, Fantastic Four, joins Star Trek writers Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly in the latest installment of the Eisner-nominated series. Both Sons of Star Trek number 4 and the 2024 Star Trek Annual are released on Wednesday, July 3rd. And that's another Week in Trek in the bag. Thank you all for joining me, and a special thanks, of course, to the Patreon supporters. We have lots of new Star Trek to talk about over the next month, and I hope you'll join me on this channel as we discuss Prodigy, Lower Decks, and everything else coming our way on our screens, e-readers, in our bookstores, and our comic book pages. Happy Canada Day to my viewers in the Great White North. Happy Independence Day to those south of the border. And to everyone, live long and prosper.